Okay, later in the course we will cover elliptical orbits. I will not do that today, and so I will march on to a completely different topic, and that is the topic of power. So I will abandon for now the orbits entirely. What is power? Power is work that is done in a certain amount of time. The dw dt, if w is the work, is the instantaneous power at time t. We also know power in terms of political power. That's very different. Political power, you can do no work at all in a lot of time, and you have a lot of power. Here, in physics, life is not that easy. The units of power are the units of work, which is joules per second, for which we often write W, which is named after the physicist Watt. Don't confuse this W for work with the W for watt, which is 1 joule per second. Now, the work that I do, that the force is doing, is the dot product between the force and a certain displacement of that force. We have dealt with that before. That is a little bit of work that I'm doing, right? I have a force which is constant during a small displacement. And so I can substitute that in there, and so I get that the power is the derivative of this versus time. And that is, if I keep the force constant for that short amount of time, is the dot product times the velocity, because dr dt is simply the velocity of that object. So power is also force dotted with the velocity. If the force were perpendicular at all times to the velocity vector, then the power is 0. Let's take an example. I am on a bicycle. Here's my bicycle, and I'm sitting on a bicycle here, and I'm trying to get going. And I have a certain velocity, and I keep that velocity constant. That's the way most people would ride their bikes. Now, there is air drag, which is unavoidable. We discussed that. And the air drag acts like a force on me, F drag. And so somehow I, Walter Lewin, will have to come up with a force in this direction to overcome this drag so that the speed can be constant. Because if the net force is 0 on me, then of course I will have a constant velocity. No acceleration, no change in the velocity. How do I do that? Well, I push on the pedals. But the pedals push back on me. Action equals minus reaction. So that causes no net force on the bike at all. I push on the pedal, pedal pushes back on me, those two forces cancel. We call them internal forces. Now the pedals push on the chain, and the chain pushes on the wheel, and ultimately this wheel wants to start rotating in this direction because of my pedaling. And now here with the floor, with the road, there is friction. And so now the wheel pushes onto the road, and the road pushes back. Action equals minus reaction. And it is that force, which is really the friction, that is the force that Walter Lewin has to come up with in order to make sure that he can go with a constant speed. It's the friction that does it. You have to really think about it. It's remarkable. If there were no friction on that road, you couldn't cycle. I could do this and I would just stay still, right? There would never be any force here that would drive me in this direction. So you can't go. Of course, if you had a speed and you were sliding, then of course you would always maintain that speed. I want you to appreciate that the power that I have to deliver is an extremely strong function of the speed. If we are here in the domain of what I called earlier regime 2, which is the pressure-dominated regime, then the drag force is proportional to v squared. Let's say it is a constant times v squared. We spent a whole lecture on this. That's regime 2. Let's assume it's there. Then, if I have 10 miles per hour here, I drive 10 miles per hour, and I tell you that the power, this is a given, this is not something that I show you, that is just a given, that is about a power of 0.02, around 1/50th of a horsepower, and 1 horsepower is some crazy unit, 746 watts. So this is about 15 watts. So I'm pedaling, and I keep my speed 10 miles per hour, and I have to generate 15 joules per second on average. But now I want to go to 25 miles per hour. So here we get 25. That is 2.5 times higher. But now the power that I have to generate is the dot product between the force and the velocity. Now the force and the velocity are in the same direction, so the dot can disappear. So I get that the power is k times v to the third. And so now if I want the speed to go up by a factor of 2.5, the power that I have to generate is 2.5 to the power 3 times higher, and that is about 15 times higher. So now you're talking about 0.3 horsepowers, and you're talking about something like 230 watts. And that is quite a power, let me tell you. I wonder whether there are many here in the audience who could generate this for more than even half hour. Most of us could probably do it for a few minutes, but not for hours. It depends entirely, of course, on your condition.